Hello. So, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Good morning, as wherever it is where you are. This is the Morbid Symptoms news and report show, and I'm Tara Van Dyke. I'm your host, and I'm happy to be joined by Laura Jones, who has muted her microphone. I'm not sure. There you are. Hi, Laura. Laura Jones
Hello.
is our I want to say she is Scottish, our Scottish correspondent, but she's also the correspondent for Scotland. So she's our go-to person for anything Scotland, or to get we go to her to get the quote unquote, as problematic as this is, the Scottish point of view. Realizing that there are many Scottish points of views, but thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to, I need to bring up my slides. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. So we're going to go through, first we're going to have the 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 of the Morbid Symptoms report, where I just kind of went through the things that were the most, that seemed to me the most indicative of how sick or terminal or diseased or batshit crazy our system, our institutions and global order are, such as it is. So we're going to go through that briefly, focusing most of it's on I think almost all of it is around the Democratic National Convention that might be wrapping up today or tomorrow. I don't know, when there's the big reveal of the joyful and happy Kamala Harris, the hybrid of Rosa Parks and Beyonce, all wrapped into one, with a fantastic smile and a sparkling personality. And she cares. She cares. She won't do anything, and she doesn't know very much, but she cares, and she'll listen. She'll hear your voice. And then laugh like that. But maybe I hope I don't have quite. They say it's a cackle, which can't be a nice thing. Anyway, I don't know if you've caught any glimpses, if you've been unfortunate enough to catch any glimpses of what's going on in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. If you have any.
I saw a lovely video yesterday of some of the delegates leaving and sticking their fingers in their ears to avoid hearing the names of dead Palestinian children that were being read out by activists out the front, which is it's a great visual, literally sticking their fingers in their ears going, nope, I'm not listening.
Yeah, no, that's you would not know that there is a genocide going on by the party they're trying to have inside the Democratic National Convention. Nor would you know that there's any issues at all. I mean, everything's freaking great, man. And if you don't think things are great, then you're a downer and you need to change your attitude, or else you're going to elect Orange Hitler, and that'll all be on you. That's kind of like, yeah, it's crazy. That's why one of the themes, or the kind of the anchors of the show of a Morbid Symptoms media, Morbid Symptoms news and report, is that basically the idea that our system is dying is terminal. The liberal capitalist system that's been kind of ruling the roost since World War II. And but nothing really has come up or that has developed enough to really to take over from that, or to supersede it. So we have all this kind of denial and anger and bargaining and depression, both individually and collectively, and particularly with institutions. I mean, of course, institutions are made up of people, but if you would look at just kind of the collective of the Democratic Party or the Labour Party in the UK, or the Republican Party, you're just kind of like, are these people? You feel like, okay, either they're crazy or they're gaslighting me, or I'm crazy. Like, I've lost my mind. Maybe it's me. Maybe everything's okay. Maybe Kamala is a communist. Maybe Hitler is Trump. Maybe, or maybe they'll save the world. Maybe Kamala is, she's going to save us with, I don't know, her smile and day drinking. And then Trump with his like, oh, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, and I'll get to that since you brought it up. Well, and I was going to bring it up as well. There's just something so, I don't even know the word for it, Laura, like macabre or uncanny or gross. I don't even know we need new words for the fact that with the genocide that's going on, which is the, you know, which for any halfway sane or moral person takes precedence, and then all the other crap that's going on, all the other problems and crises, to have a campaign where it's, oh, it's joy and we're happy and we're partying and it's, you know, it's lovely, we're just having a good time. It's just weird. I mean, I don't even know what word it is. And when you mentioned the people who, it's like, oh, we don't want to let any negativity in, you know, like don't ruin our vacation or something. It's like somehow if you bring up the genocide and like literally all the babies and other people, you know, being blown apart by bombs that the U.S. provides, that the U.S. could stop when it wanted to, or the thing. And then you have these people who are literally think it's fine to plug their ears and go la 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 when they have to go by people who are reading out the names of those who've been killed by Made in America and paid for by the American taxpayer bombs. Yeah. And we're supposed to, and they want to have this theme be joy. Yeah. I don't know. Can you think of any word that
the whole thing is weird. I mean, it is honestly the last 10 months, it's been like being through the looking glass, you know, as cynical and as, you know, sort of like pessimistic as I was about human nature and the way people act in groups and you know, nations and all the rest of it. I still never could have expected this. It's like, you know, like we probably grew up, I think anybody who has a kind of an interest in history and social justice probably grew up quite concerned and interested in the Holocaust and researched it a bit and looked into the history of that. And
like, how could that happen? How could everybody let that happen?
It. And we all ask ourselves,
how naive we were.
How does that happen? How does that propaganda work? What would I have done? Would I have been moral? Would I have been too scared? Like, you know, how, you know, like, and I guess you don't know until you're in that situation, and now we know. But I kind of thought that there would be, if something was blatant enough, that people would recognize that and go, oh wait, hang on a second, we've been here before. It seems like unless it looks exactly the same, unless it's, you know, exactly the same people and exactly the same ethnicities that are targeted, and you know, unless it's another guy called Hitler with a swastika, nobody's gonna recognize it. And maybe Gaza just isn't that big a deal politically for people in the West. Like, obviously, and like, I feel bad saying precedented like upsurge in anti-war and you know, activism, and I really don't want to, you know, be like, oh, like the students aren't doing enough sort of thing. No, loads of people have been standing up and screaming. And especially in America, I never thought I would see the day when people would be marching in the streets in their thousands wearing keffiyehs in America. Like, I never thought that would happen. So that's been a huge, huge change and groundswell of opinion. But it
doesn't seem to matter. That's also.
Yeah, that's it. Politically, in terms of election results, it doesn't seem to matter. But then again, looking back, all right, well, let's say even during the Holocaust, politically, were people in America or in the UK, was their main concern the plight of the Jewish people? No, probably not. It would have been food rationing and you know, like survival and you know, what's our future going to look like for this country? In fact, it took a long time for people to take an interest. And it's the same when you look at other major genocides. Look at the Congo. It took years and years of hard work to even get people to realize, like, look, they're just slaughtering millions of people over there. And again, you know, like with Rwanda, like, I guess a lot of us felt quite detached from that. Like at the time, I mean, I was only a kid, so the kind of narrative was a bit like, oh, isn't it sad the way in Africa you get these tribes of people that just kill each other for no reason, you know, because of ethnic stuff, you know, because they hatred for no reason. And then it was only quite recently that I then ended up looking into the history, and I went, oh, it was Belgium. We did that. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's always there's a history there. It was Belgium that decided to like legally codify different ethnicities and enforce them having, you know, like ID cards and all this stuff. So that it's a typical divide and conquer, you know, colonialism
Yeah.
stuff. But sorry, I've just gone off on one a bit there. But yeah, it's maddening. But I wonder, maybe this is just standard. People are more concerned about paying the rent, food, what's going on in their own community, than they are about people getting slaughtered on the other side of the world, even if it is tax dollars paying for it.
Well, here, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that the media is different this time around. That the instantaneous, you know, that they're having, I think, which is also why you have the censorship getting into full swing, because when they can't count on people not having you know, so the people just are too busy, or they're not you know, they're not paying attention or know what's going on all the way over there, or even across you know, a different state or different county. And when that ceases to be the case, and when the lies or the distraction or the gaslighting don't work anymore, then now we have the censorship, the lawfare, people getting arrested over and over again. So, you know, because they just don't want to deal with it. But I think, yeah, the media, I appreciate what you're saying, of course. And I think that from you know, from looking at something from a distance, when you're not there, it's easy to think, oh well, you know how, or you assume that, well, people probably didn't know, and if people did know, then if and you know, you have a lot of people like Chomsky, for one, and other people who think, well, when people know better, they do better. So if you have the facts, and you're not being totally, you know, it's not being so manufactured of consent, you're not being propagandized, that the vast majority of people, when they know better, will do better. And I don't really know if I believe that anymore. And it could be because, you have this, like, well, what can I do, you know? And if it's a terrible situation and you're like, well, you know, I can post about it, but that doesn't seem to matter. I can call my senator or my representative. I could go to a march. But it seems like when it becomes clear, and I think this is what the acceptance seems to be now, that the people who can do something just aren't going to do it. Doesn't matter what we do, or, I mean, like, within the bounds of acceptable dissent. So they're just going to play this out. Yeah, it seems.
I think it is true that it's good for people to know more, but I don't think it does necessarily make them do better. And I wonder, maybe because you've spent time in Gaza, so you've seen, you know, what goes on. And I remember one time I having a, you know, late night philosophical chat with Nick, and saying something about how I believed that human nature was fundamentally good, and that's why you need to employ an awful lot of coercion on people and propaganda to make them do these horrible things. And he said, nah, I don't think so. I think people just do what's easy. And so, you know, that's how he's seen guys in Gaza shooting children just because no one told them to do it. They weren't given an order by their officer. It's just, it becomes easy.
Yeah.
Easy. And I think for a lot of these women that are going, oh, you know, like, Palestinians deserve to die because they don't like gay people, or whatever justification, it's become easy for them in their social circles, you know, and people will just parrot.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's human nature, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that I think, which is good to be acceptant of that, you know, yeah, and then what you do with that, but still the idea that it just seems so bizarre. It's like, what's the end game? It's like, does the US really want their unsinkable aircraft carrier that bad, that they'll let them do whatever they want? I mean, and sometimes I wonder if they're also, it's hard to know. And again, the material reality stays the same, whether or not they're the people who could say, look, you know, enough is enough. We're not gonna provide you any more weapons to do this nastiness. So this is gonna stop. But of course, if they were gonna do that, it wouldn't happen now. It would have happened months ago, once it was quite clear the Netanyahu's regime was using this as a pretense to kind of engage, to kind of lock and load their quote unquote, you know, what I would say called their final solution to their Palestinian problem. They were going to use this as a pretense to do exactly what they're doing now. And so they keep on doing it, and people who say anything about it are anti-Semites. You have these hate speech things going on, being passed in the United States. And there's also draconian speech censorship going on in the UK now. And you're like, really, they're really going to go full frontal, for lack of a better word, for Israel, so that Israel can kill as many Palestinians as they can, and then tell us it's self-defense, and people are like, well, they are Muslim and they are that, and people, all these random
things. It just feels like the entire
say.
Political system.
No, go ahead.
I think the entire political system in America is locked in, with Zionism, though, in a very kind of institutional, there is no escaping that. And I don't know if either party could escape that. I don't think
I don't even know if they want to. I mean, it's
obviously they don't.
Sometimes you wonder if, again, with the dark side of human nature that we want to, I think, isolate to certain instances or certain people, not realizing how maybe there's a lot of people who just didn't go Hitler or Pol Pot or whatever another person we can think of, because they just didn't have the opportunity. I mean, and it's just and I think maybe there's this thing that kind of gets off on it. And also this lying. It's when they go out and it's the same thing with the official statements from the UK government and the EU government, that lovely woman, or the US. It's like, I know that they're full of bull crap, that they're just lying. Now, I don't know if they've convinced themselves of whatever, or if they just get off on it, but there's some really weird stuff going on here. It's like they're not lying because they want to shield the truth, because the truth is the truth for anyone who bothers to take a couple of moments to look into it. It's quite clear. They're just lying because they can. What are you going to do about it? This is our story. They go out and they say the story they want, and most of the press pretends like it's an honest transaction. Maybe one or two reporters will say something, a moderate bit of pushback, just moderate, and then 2 days later, the same thing. I wonder why I wonder if it's just having to maintain appearances or what, because it's like at a certain point, like, why even bother with these things? Why even bother with these performances when it's just bullshit? Why not just say, yeah, same as yesterday? Why have this whole performance? It's just for jobs or something?
I mean, as down as I am on, all these fecking GC, far right accounts now, as down as I am on human nature and all the rest of it, when I see some of the stuff that they come out with, I think they can't be seeing the images that we're seeing, not on the same scale. Do you know what I mean? So when we're going online, we're seeing constant images of children with their, just like the most horrific, every possible imaginable way that somebody can be tortured or killed. We've now seen it in full HD, but I don't think these women are seeing it. I think something different is popping up on their feed, and they're not getting this stuff in the mainstream press. So to them, there really are a lot of them telling themselves it's not happening. This whole Pallywood thing that
it's all fake.
Away this huge studio where they're simultaneously.
Although some people are dropping the
making
masks,
their own fake genocide while getting bummed by the.
But some people, I think, it's also the masks are dropping, because I remember, I'm sure he's one of your favorites, Douglas Murray. So it used to be for a while that he was about, protecting core Western, whatever you want to call it, values, civil, institutions, and he was very, very aghast at infringements on free speech and all this stuff. But now it seems quite clear to me that he's just totally gung ho with Western imperialism, totally gung ho. Not just that our way of doing things is better, so we want to protect it, but our way of doing things is better, and we should project it everywhere. I mean, so like Fortress Europe, Fortress UK, but projecting, he's all for it, all for it. And he's not the only one. I mean,
So. Did you see Bev Jackson referring to the invasion of Afghanistan as a brief reprieve for the women of Afghanistan from the oppression they were living under.
God, no, I must
Hundreds of thousands of people murdered, displaced, no access to electricity, water, roads being bombed, people getting, but a brief reprieve for the women of Afghanistan. And, it was great to see those doctors being brought over and everything. I'm sick at what's happening to women in Afghanistan. But you listen to some of these people and you're like, what's your solution here? Do you think we should invade? Is that it? Oh, why haven't we tried this before? How come we haven't tried to get rid of the Taliban? Do you know, I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it.
It just seems like thinly veiled chauvinism, yeah. So, and of course, I'm no fan of I wouldn't want to live under Taliban rule, okay? And I also have to be aware of the fact that I also have to be skeptical of whenever think I have a clear picture of how terrible a group or a person is, and it's entirely based on what the media has been feeding me, I have to be skeptical. However, I'm not gonna, I'm confident enough to say, yeah, that that thing. But it's like, why did the Taliban gain control of Afghanistan twice? Can we go back a bit? And that's not to say that the people there don't have agency, aren't also responsible, but and again, we know this. They don't want to know because they want to be like, oh, Western feminism, or we're going to save these women, or if they don't want to be saved, then fuck them, whatever it is that if you really care about women, it's not rocket science. If you can reduce economic precarity and increase personal security, the women will take care of it on their own. They'll figure out. They'll negotiate the relations between the sexes that they're interested in what they want to have actually codified in law versus what's just the social norms and whatnot. And of course, there's variety. Not all women are the same. But it's like if you reduce the precarity, increase the security, and let them figure it out. And it's like,
but we wouldn't. We wouldn't do that because the last thing that the West wants, thing that the West wants is Arab nations. Yeah, but the West does not want Arab nations to become, connected and to start looking at social. I mean, sorry, every time an Arab nation tries to elect a forward-thinking socialist government that is interested in women's rights, the West freaks out because we would far prefer everything to be run by religious fundamentalists. They're much less of a threat to our interests in the region. So you go back to the 50s, for example, in Iran. It was the last thing that we wanted for Iran to be a modern socialist country. We had to get rid of that and bring back do you know what I mean? That's how the revolution happened. We wanted that. We did that.
That's why, because we have these nasty people in the putting their fingers in their ears, going la 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 la, so they don't have to hear the names of Palestinians that have been killed. And then we have these dipshit feminists who are like la 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 la, imperialism, la 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 la, colonialism, la 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 la, corrupt regimes, la 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 la. I don't want to hear it. And does she really think that when the invasion happened, that all of a sudden it was just a flourishing of female empowerment and creativity? I mean, like, I guess what she would consider it. It's like, what? And it's just so stupid. Then when stuff gets really, the crazier stuff gets, the more protective, and oftentimes for very good reasons, families have to become over their women. Duh. From foreigners and non-foreigners. I mean, I don't know. I'm too old or just too, it's just like, shut up with this crap. And they're so confident. Who would say that? Oh, there was a brief reprieve for the women in, was it Afghanistan when we invaded? Was that what she's saying? Yeah. Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
It's been great for the women. Yeah. Well, for some, maybe, who were in the green zone in the protected areas, and they were totally cut loose and left to dangle in the wind.
that weren't being sexually exploited or whatever.
Yeah.
We forget all the crimes, all the horrific.
As the idea that states have ever done anything primarily for the good of women, really? Is that also why Columbus sailed across the sea?
They use us all the time.
Is that why Genghis Khan went across the plains?
So when we need
is that why India? Is that why the sun never set on the British Empire? Because of the women?
Yeah, well, exactly. When we need an excuse. When we need an excuse to go in heavy-handed or remove a government or a regime or bomb the hell out of a country, suddenly we're all feminists and look how terrible we did it with Iraq, we did it with Afghanistan. They did it with Iraq the first time around.
I'm surprised they didn't do it with Vietnam and Korea. Didn't have time, I guess.
Why not? Look how terrible they are to their women. The women would be ever so grateful to us if we bombed them and killed their children. And women like having access to water. Women like not. Do you know what I mean? Like having access to health.
I don't think I ever thought. You know what's missing in my life? Bombs dropping.
Yeah, if only someone would come and bomb all the men, and then that would save us all forever. It's absolutely maddening. But the thing is with these. The thing is, being a feminist on the left, right, has always been not that easy. It's not being a feminist easy being a feminist generally, because you have to work with men, and men frequently have different interests, or they don't, take women's interests seriously. And then you're stuck trying to have a little bit of space within those groups where you can try to organize women, and that always leads to tensions. And so, nobody is more familiar with the tensions between anti-imperialism and anti-capitalism than us. We're the ones that have been having those arguments since we were fucking children, basically. So, the thing about, oh, well, what about... First, I grew up in Belgium, right? So Brussels. I wrote an article when I was 14 years old, right, for a little paper that they started in our school called "Sexism is Making Me Racist," right? And it was about going
Look
out
at you,
as a young
14. Sexism is making me racist.
Yeah, so getting abuse, street harassment off.
Okay.
Generally, North African young men in Belgium, and how you could easily interpret those experiences and be like, oh, well, clearly Muslims are a problem, immigrants are a problem, etc. But kind of the point of the article was well, actually, no, this is a cultural thing, and you're talking about a marginalized group, and you're talking about a minority within that group, because we've got loads and loads of North Africans, and it's only a minority that behave this way. And it was basically saying there's more complex reasons behind these behaviors than just people have cultural differences. And it was something that I always kind of tried to think about a lot when I was growing up, because there was a lot of street harassment. And it's something that I then, when I moved to the UK, tried to talk to my left-wing friends about, to their absolute horror. So they're like, I don't like this conversation, Laura. This is really uncomfortable. We're not going to even go there. And I'm going, no, I'm not racist. I'm just saying that. And they're like, no, that's super racist what you're saying. And then after that, got to meet other left-wing women from Belgium and France who were like, yes, this is a problem. And left-wing guys really don't want to talk about it because they don't, because they just see it as a racism thing. And then I had my own education of going and traveling to Muslim countries and realizing that men don't behave like that there. There aren't gangs of young men hanging out on the streets harassing young girls. That's a problem when you create ghettos of immigrant communities, when you marginalize people. And there's even certain pubs and clubs and things that would be really difficult to get into as a Moroccan guy or an Algerian guy in Belgium. You're far more likely to get arrested, far more likely to experience racism and all the rest of it. So what you've got is a small minority of marginalized guys who are feeling very kind of shat on by society and are taking it out on vulnerable people, teenage girls being the obvious target. But that doesn't mean that that's what Islam does to people. It's a very
people get this
version of reality. A Muslim does this thing to me, therefore it must be that Muslims are taught to do this thing, and if I go to a Muslim country, that's what everyone's like, and if they come over here, that's how they're going to behave. No, it's much more complex than that. And it's an idea about like integration, for example, being a good thing. Like in the UK, on the left in the UK, you talk about integration, and it's kind of like that's a racist dog whistle, because integration to them means you leave everything behind. You leave your culture. You don't speak your language. You assimilate in British culture. You become as British as possible, and then you will have succeeded, because no one will ever confuse you as for anything other than British. Whereas I think for me, and I'm not saying that in Europe we don't have racism, like I'm just saying it's a bit different and we have different attitudes to certain concepts. Integration would be like, you have mates that are Belgian, you go to a Belgian school, you work with Belgian, you
run into different people and learn
you
about
are a part of
them and how to deal
society.
with
It doesn't mean you
yeah.
can't also have yeah, and then you'll meet people out and about, and they'll be like, "Oh, where are you from? Or where's your family from?" And they'll be like, "Oh, Morocco." You know, whereas if you say that here, if you said to someone, "Oh, where's your family from?" They'd be like, "What the fuck do you mean? I'm British. Why would you ask me that? You big racist." You know.
No, well, whenever I'm in most countries outside. Well, when I talk, people ask me where I'm from, and it's no problem. I mean, it's always kind of funny when I remember reading someone's like, you shouldn't ask. It's always some really upper class person. You shouldn't ask somebody where they're from. It's racist. I'm like, I'm asked where I'm from all the time. Like every time I get into a taxi, I'm asked where I'm from. I don't think it's racist. And then I ask them, and then I listen to the person's accent. And if they have an accent, and then I'm in the and I can also, but that's the first giveaway, is the accent, because I know that I live in a place where there's people from different places that have been coming here for a few generations. So but if my ear doesn't pick up a British accent or whatever, then I'm like, hey, where are you from? But yeah, this idea that just having like small talk is racist, it's like, whatever, people. But I also think it's interesting. I know what you're talking about, because if somebody's first flex is anything negative you say about a person that is not from the majority somehow is a racist statement, that in itself is racist in a way, because you're just like, well, it's for us, that's fine. But for them, it's some sort of like, this weird kind of hierarchy of expectations or norms. It's like, no, everyone can, it's not like some people just have to cat call, and like it's like a peacock has to peacock, some people just
but
have to
I
cat
think
call.
it's okay.
It's like, no. Yeah, but yeah.
But I think it's okay to have conversations about, for example, like, I'm always talking about it because I am someone that moved from one country to another and then to another country. So when you do that, you want to talk about it. It's a big deal to you. And there's a lot of things that are different, even coming from like another English speaking country or another European country. It's still a bit of a culture shock. And it's good to talk about that. And I wish British people were a bit more interested in talking about, like, oh, you moved, but we are quite insular. We are an island, and people don't really kind of see the value in going elsewhere or learning other languages or things. But I don't think there's a problem having conversations about, like, oh, well, I moved to this country and this was shocking for me, or I had to, I had to get used to this kind of cultural or social thing. And yeah, that might include, women dress differently where I come from, or, religion is a bigger deal, or, we don't make noise on a Sunday, or whatever
Yeah,
it
no,
is.
I mean, this whole thing about either not saying anything or
that conversation should be informed by facts, and it should include the people that you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's the only thing. You can't just be
well,
like,
yeah, if you're living
I met
together,
a
if you have
Muslim
to,
once, or I saw a news story about a Muslim guy, therefore I'm going to basically discount all of these people from all these different countries because they have Islam there.
No, people are, I mean, they're afraid or ignorant. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's like if you're gonna have, it's like if you're gonna have a mix, and a mix of anybody, but particularly people from different cultures and different, kind of shared practices or whatever that you don't really notice that you have until you're someplace where they have different ones. You're like, oh, it's like, how is this going to work? You got to be able to have conversations. And I don't think anybody, unless they're being total idiots, under the impression that the group they're from is perfect or can't tolerate any scrutiny or whatever. It's like, if this is going to work out, if we're not just going to have the people with their head in the sand, like everything's great, anybody that says anything is a racist, or the people that are like, blood and soil, and we need to get everybody out who isn't, pure blood or something. It's like, you got to have
Yeah.
you got to be willing to have the conversations, and and to figure it out. Sometimes what you're saying is fine and people are being too sensitive. Sometimes what you're saying crosses the line and people aren't being too sensitive, but you're not going to figure that out if you're not willing to go into the arena with, a good faith, a good, a good intention. I just, yeah. But I have lived in several different places and traveled around. So it's like, I don't, I'm, maybe that helps. Although I'm sure that's not the only thing. Like, if everyone would just travel, everything would be great. I mean, I think it'd be it'd be nice if you spent some time outside of your comfort zone. But anyway. So speaking of denial and gaslighting and telling lies, not to cover up a truth, but just to exert your power, that it doesn't matter that you're saying something that's totally crazy. So Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, she's fantastic. She's the U.S. ambassador to the UN. And she tweeted this out today. 2 billion people live in conflict-affected areas. Our charge must be to stop anyone from experiencing the hell that is war. It is incumbent on all of us to create conditions that foster peace. And this is the woman that time and time again will raise her hand to vote against ceasefires or any resolution that is at all critical of Israel. And she, apparently without any twinge of conflict, or whoever runs her site, had the gall to put out this whopper. Or maybe you have maybe you think it's a fantastic message. I mean, I think it's if she wasn't voting against if she wasn't supporting a genocide, it would be a nice message.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I just want to be like, girl, and I do that if she was a whatever color it was, like, really? Okay. And then we have, this is from Mr. Fish, which was he's well, obviously he does drawings and I don't know what you would call this. He's an artist, but he also does cartoon type stuff. What's his name? Christopher Hedges uses him a lot, and this was the graphic for the latest Chris Hedges piece, when he's basically saying that the only thing we can do, that we need to do to stop what's going on in Gaza, is to pressure the U.S. government to stop sending Israel weapons and intelligence and all this stuff. But I don't, and it's true. It's true. I mean, I don't know. And this is also what I don't like. This is, and talking about human nature, is that I find myself waiting. I find myself wanting to wake up and find out that Iran bombed the shit out of Tel Aviv. And I don't like feeling that way. I really don't. But that's how I feel. I would be like, and I mean, if I saw actual but I'm like, at this point, given what's going on, given everything that we know about Zionism and the Israel Project and all this stuff, if I woke up tomorrow and I was like, Iranian bombs rain down on Tel Aviv and Hezbollah has taken over northern Israel, I'd be like, praise Allah and Jesus. And
you're not allowed to say that, Tara. Only the other side are allowed to revel.
Oh my God, I would, and I don't, and I know that I would, and I know that's not cool.
No, you have to rise above it all.
That's right.
No,
you just need to find out. Not good.
Suffer.
Not good.
You need to suffer the constant imperialism. Not allowed to fight back. No. Yeah. I mean, this is like, I think we need to stop being such wimps, and this is like, I'm annoyed, and I really don't want to attack. I don't want to have a go at people that are essentially on our side, or like trying to.
We don't have to mention names. We can just
No,
be like,
of course
you know
not,
the
but
type. You know
yeah,
the
but
type.
it's I kind of think of them as lib femmes, but like they call
Mm.
themselves rad femmes, and like we need to stop pussyfooting around this. Going like, oh no, like people aren't racist because they say they hate Muslims, but it's just that they're being manipulated, and like, oh, like we think people could be a little bit more compassionate towards the women of Palestine, but of course we understand why people might agree with bombing them to hell. Like, I'm so sick of it. Can we actually be a little bit more honest about what's going on? Because this lot don't care. They have no filter. Posey Parker is out here literally wearing a crown, acting like some kind of crazed overlord, saying fuck femmes. Socialist feminists hate women more than men do.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm honestly like, we went through all this. All the arguments that they're chucking at us are the arguments that we have been making to left-wing men for decades. They have no idea how good we have had to get at these arguments, going like, the cultural relativism that goes on, the nonsense around like the Arab Spring, where left-wing men were going, oh, look, women are empowered, and they're all storming, like they're at the front lines of all these, and like, Western feminists are, quaking in their boots at the sight of these like strong women. And it's like, well, no, let's be practical. Let's be realistic about this. There are movements for change. Let's hear about what they're doing and what their challenges, etc., are, instead of just like going like, oh, well, we agree with this, so let's just pretend it chimes with all of our values now already, so that way we can sell it to our people. We have had to have those arguments, like to say, look, the left has a misogyny problem. For God's sake, we were kicked out of the left and called Nazis for these very reasons. But now these women they're arguing with us, and
you have a lot of left men who will put the needs and the feelings over men who get off pretending that they're women over women. So those guys can F right off. And I have no problem telling him that.
Yeah, but
I'm like, that's why I'm Schrodinger's bitch, because I don't
right wing. Yeah, but I'd go for like these right wing feminists. Sorry, they don't even call themselves feminists. I don't know why I'm calling them that. These right wing GC people, who are against transgender ideology, they haven't had to argue as much as us. They haven't had that experience of losing actual friends. The schisms, the deep, painful social tearing apart of groups and colleagues, people that we worked with on things that we cared about, who turned around after years of activism and said, "Now you're actually on the right. You're a far right person. You're a fascist now." They actually lumped us in with them, and we had to constantly make the argument like, "No, this is not fascism." and now these women are like defending themselves against the same accusations as if like, oh, well, if somebody's calling me a fascist, like it can't be true. And it's like, I don't know. I guess the amount of time we had to make this. So people said being against transgender ideology is the same as being racist, because racist people experience oppression, and so do trans people. Therefore, it's the same thing, and you're basically a racist, and that makes you basically a fascist.
Yeah, and I'm here to say something should be oppressed.
The reason you keep
everything that some behaviors
is discrimination.
Be suppressed. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But it is discrimination against men to tell them not to go into the women's toilets, or not to go into women's changing rooms. That is a form of discrimination. But the point is, it's based in fact. If you look at the facts, we know that males are statistically more likely.
No, you don't even have to go there, Laura. You don't even have to go. You don't even have to go there.
We know that. We have the facts to bear that out.
Yeah. No, but we shouldn't have the facts to back up.
I know, but the thing is, what we do not
boys
have,
in the women's room.
But the reason,
but I agree with you.
The reason it's not the same as racism.
No, God no.
But the reason it's not the same as racism is because the accusations that Muslim men are more likely to commit certain crimes are not borne out in fact. Anybody can check the crime stats and they can actually look and see that that is not the case. So we're just talking about materialist facts. And these women are now turning around going, oh, how dare you? You're gaslighting me, calling me a racist for like pointing out facts. No, because they're not facts.
No.
You have to actually be able to.
Yeah. What you happen to believe or you heard and it resonated with you doesn't mean and it's so like it's like you may think this is true, but I'm telling you, oh, they don't like it. But not that anybody would, but it's just like that they act so, I'm not a racist. Like you're like literally the most racist thing I've heard like in like a week in Twitter, and that's saying something. Racist. I mean, it's just they have these few factoids, and then they just it's like basically what you're saying is you have a few factoids, few things, and maybe this I'm not saying that that some people haven't done these acts in these places, but then you're basically turning around and saying that because they're Muslim X, Y, and Z, or because they're from Palestine X, Y, and Z, and that is racist on the face of it. It just is.
Literal definition of it. Like,
what is it's like if you're basically saying white people because they're white or this and this and that, black people because they're black or this and this and that, Muslims because they're Muslims or this and this and that, that is a racist statement. You're picking out one small thing and you're having it stand in for the whole of the thing so that you can stand above it and say how bad it is and how good you are. It's not difficult what you're doing. You didn't make, and you can feel fine about it. You could believe it. That's fine, but it still doesn't change the fact that just objectively, this is what's going on here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And how much does it remind you of TRAs? Because how many times did we over the years have to go, look, some of this sexism and the explicit sexual language and the threats and the rape and all this, and we go, look, this is really bad, and they'd go, what? I haven't seen any of that. That doesn't happen. It's just like it doesn't.
A man would never pretend to be a woman.
Well, then
to
what
get
happens?
Access
Some
to
poor
women.
woman has to troll through all this abuse. Exactly, and take all the screenshots and provide the evidence. Look, here's 500 examples of different guys saying, that they're, threatening and all the rest of it. And someone has to then do that. And now we're in that same situation. So you go like, oh, there's an awful lot of racism in GC circles. Like, no, there isn't. I haven't seen anyone say anything bad about Muslims. So now what? We have to waste more time trawling through abusive anti-Muslim racist to be, oh, look, it is actually happening.
But do we have to do that? Or can we just say, why do we have to do that? I mean, you have a couple and just say, look, this is representative. If you want to argue, if you want to argue that this isn't representative, then you GC person have to go and demonstrate to me how it's just a couple of random isolated incidents.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain that.
I'm sick of it.
Go ahead and explain why half of you keep on saying that Hamas is to blame for everyone that gets killed in Gaza. Explain to me explain to me that comment.
Yeah.
They love that. Oh, human shields, or it's too bad that Hamas didn't think about the children before they before they conducted. Whatever. They just swallow it all whole. It's like, all right, okay, yeah, I know what you're saying, but that's the thing is that when and that's maybe that's just the way it is if you're on the subordinate side of the binary on the weaker side, even though the other people's arguments or positions are just like whatever, it's the onus becomes, or at least it feels like it is, on us to offer a preponderance of evidence, even though we know that most of them will just like, well, we'll come up with some reason to excuse it or to poo-poo it or something. What else to do? I don't know, unless we get really like, like.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, Tara, right? What you could do, Tara, is you could do like a really, really milquetoast, watered down statement, right? That says, not naming any names, right? But that just goes, hey guys, I've noticed a bit of racism. Maybe we could cool it with that. I'm not personally into it. And then we could get people to sign it. And I mean, how could they possibly take offense at that, right? Unbelievable. You write like this little thing going like, I think racism is bad. And it's
Yeah.
hundreds of
And
women
it
are like,
turns
how
into you
dare you
hate
call me a racist? Didn't.
yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
said racism was a bad thing. You stuck your hand up and went, hey, that's me you're talking about. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm not racist.
Yeah.
Well, then it's not about you, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, and the people that wrote that lovely letter, that you know, the trying to be reasonable, just a bunch of left Stasi women hating women.
Oh, well, there were men. There were men, Tara.
Oh,
Men wrote
uh-oh.
that letter. So obviously we can't think for ourselves, and we just
Oh,
wait
that's
for some
right.
guy
That's
to
right.
come along and write a letter because these dudes obviously
Internalized. That's right. I thought I sensed a whiff of
they invented the
internalized
concept of
patriarchy.
anti-racism.
Ah.
Oh, we wouldn't have known about the United Front against fascism if it hadn't have been for them, like last week, inventing it and telling us all to sign their letter.
And one last nastiness. There's two things. One's kind of funny. This is nasty. Is that let's see. Basan Atif Adwa has been nominated for an Academy Award for her documentary. And these lovely ladies are unhappy. So Deborah Messing, Selma Blair, Sherry Lansing, Rick Rosen, Haim Saban, and Michelle Rottenberg have signed a letter authored by the pro-Israel nonprofit Creative Community for Peace. If you have Israel and peace in your, I mean, there's Jews for peace, but if you have Israel and peace in your title, I don't know. I guess it's possible. I should say pro-Israel nonprofit Creative Community for Peace, urging the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences to rescind the nomination of Basan Atef Adwa, who was recognized in the news and documentary category for its Basan from Gaza and I'm Still Alive. Can you believe this? I mean, I can, but now, even today, these people are doing this. These nasty people. I mean, can you imagine? They can't even they can't handle any light of truth or fact to affect their I don't know, their Hasbro cloud. I don't know what it is. Their worldview of Israel and what it is and what it does. That they have to try to lobby to get this woman to get them to take away her nomination.
Did they say anything about her? Like, why? What's wrong with her? What did she do?
I didn't, to be honest, I didn't read the full thing, but it's just because it's probably anti-Semitic or who knows what, you know, but it's just basically she was in Gaza. It's about her time in Gaza, doing journalism in Gaza. And they don't want that to be, I guess, I don't know, who knows? I'll look into it and get back to you, but they're calling it propaganda. I mean, I don't know. But they want them to rescind it, and the only reason they'd have to give some reason, and my guess is because it's anti-Semitic, or I mean, not that it is, but I mean, it's very obviously. I'm quite sure that it's Basan from Gaza and I'm Still Alive. I'm pretty sure that Israel doesn't come out looking good. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and be like, they're not the hero.
Yeah, bless her.
They're not the good guy in this documentary. And I guess that's the problem. I mean, I'm sure they'd have no problem if it was like, you know, I don't know, someone's one-man campaign to bring the hostages home or something. I'm sure they'd be all for that. But it's just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. You have to just assume that they just live in some sort of bubble. But it could be that they are some. I mean, but then you have people like Barry Weiss who seem to have an understanding of what's required to attain the dream of a Jewish state in Palestine. And, you know, the unavoidable burdens, or unbelievable, unavoidable burdens type of thing. She seems to be like, and they might be as well too, because it's not like this is the first time that nasty things have happened for a cause. I mean, this is a well-worn path that apparently is baked in the cake, because I'm finding it hard to believe that the arc of history tends towards justice. Ah. And although this is just, oh, okay, well, this is kind of funny, I guess, before we go into the housing part, is that, again, in terms of the denial and the bargaining, pretending that either Kamala or Trump are any kind of fantastic candidate. This is Stephen King, and he's the famous author, and he's all in for Kamala, and he's wearing the "I'm Speaking" T-shirt. So what happened was, she was giving a talk someplace, I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago, and a couple of young Palestinian American, I think they're Palestinian American, but they're Arab, Muslim American young women, started to call for a ceasefire, say ceasefire now, or something. And she basically said, if you want Trump to win, go ahead, but right now I'm speaking, is what she did, something like that to them. and 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 you have to give credit where credit is due. You gotta give the devil the credit where the credit is due. I mean, instead of there were some points to like, the next time she handled it a bit differently, because of course that's going to be following her wherever she goes, I'd imagine. I'd hope so. But they turned it into a T-shirt. I'm speaking.
Wow.
So, and then this is James Wood.
Wow.
He's an actor. I don't know if he's, I don't know if he's familiar to you, but he's been an actor for a long time in the States. And he's says, so this is breaking news. Hollywood legend. Okay. James Wood says, let's face it, Donald Trump is a rough individual. He is vain, insensitive, and raw, but he loves America more than any president in my lifetime. First of all, who gives a crap? What does that have to do with anything? I mean, I know how people feel about people matters, but this idea that somehow everyone's pretending that Trump is some sort of fantastic leader, that this time around it's all going to be different, even though he's not even talking about trade or industrial and bringing industrial jobs back to the States anymore, regardless of how difficult that would be. Now it's all about he's fighting communists, because no one's more communist than the totally capitalist Democratic Party. But we're all being asked to pretend that there's some sort of huge, like, mythic biblical battle going on in this election, when the biblical part is the nastiness that's going on, particularly in Gaza. But it's just weird. I don't know. Do you have this kind of craziness in UK politics, where we're asked to pretend that, like, Keir Starmer is like Thor or something?
They definitely don't have the sort of rock star status that they have here. We don't do these big rallies with the signs and the yelling and the, live bands and stuff. It's all very, I don't know, showbiz,
Yeah, oh yeah. It's all form. It's all form, no content these days.
Yeah.
And it's always been more form than content, but now it's really like, you don't even, like, why would you even bother having any content? That's stupid. We have joy. And that's another thing that
but I mean, we had an election, we got it over with in 6 weeks.
Thank God. But this whole joy thing, I think that, and somebody else mentioned this, I don't know who it was, but that because they had an issue, because Kamala was always breaking out into, like, laughter all the time, like, but it seemed like in weird moments she would just start laughing. And so instead of work, I guess that maybe that's just something she does. I mean, I don't know. There's also rumors that she drinks a lot, which but now they're leaning into her quirks. Yeah. So now it's like, no, it's not weird that she does that. It's just because she's so happy and full of joy. That's why she's always breaking out into laughter at weird times.
Right.
I think it's all advertising execs on this campaign, or influencers. I don't know. But yeah. Okay. So we've been going on this stuff for a while. Let's get into the meat of the matter. I wanted to bring love talking to Laura, but I wanted to bring her on in particular to get her take on the UK election now that it's been, when was it? It was July 4th. It's been like 6 weeks now, maybe 7 weeks
Yeah, it
since the
was, wasn't
election,
it? Was it?
because I needed to give time for
Yeah.
Laura to mourn and to get over, because she was in the thick of it. She was a candidate, Nick Dury, for the
Yeah.
Alba party. Alba, is it Alba? I don't want to say ABBA.
Albert, yeah.
So she was in the thick of it, and unfortunately, he was not successful. So I wanted to, which I can imagine that you need some time to you need some time to deal with that. But now she's here to give us her take on the UK election in general, but in specific
We
about
have
the
not been
Scottish
licking
vote.
our wounds.
Yeah, the Scottish vote, and what's going on. What, if anything, this means for the Scottish independence movement, how the vote panned out, and also related to this is the ongoing housing crisis and the politics thereof in Scotland. So we'll see how far we get before she says, "Okay, I've had it." But first of all, I should say that Laura Jones, in addition to being a fantastic lady, is to use the parlance of our time, she identifies as a radical feminist. She's also international socialist, and she is a homeless. She campaigns for housing, for public housing, and advocates for the homeless in Scotland. And she is for Scottish independence. So on that note, I had this map. I don't know if this helps at all, but I had this map of the vote. And so I'll just turn over to you. How would you kind of like in a nut, what would be your, so tell us what your take is about what meaning you take from the UK election in general, in particular, this how Scotland voted.
Yeah. So in terms of the UK election more generally, I don't know. I'm so sick of our politics being determined by English politics that there's this kind of temptation to just ignore it to an extent because it's a different country and we want to get on with our own country. But obviously our fates are inextricably tied to theirs, so you kind of have to. I mean, we have a Labour government now in the UK, but Keir Starmer is. I mean, there's a lot of young people around that are moaning that Labour is no longer the party of working people, and for a lot of them, I'm like, you weren't alive. You had, you wouldn't be born for another 10 years or whatever. The last time that Labour actually, represented working people, they got rid of Clause 4 in like 97. Something that they've never seen in my lifetime, been a party that stands up for working people. But anyway, people keep having this idea that they're reformable, that Labour can be reformed. And I mean, we tried that. Corbyn was ousted and crushed, despite all these young people joining the Labour Party and trying to turn it to the left, it could not be reformed. But anyway, people still have hope.
Yeah, that dream doesn't want to die. We had the
Scottish
same thing.
People didn't come out in droves to vote Labour. That's not what happened. Sorry.
So I know I just wanted to say that I just wanted to highlight what you said, that there's a lot of dreams or ideologies that we really need to disabuse ourselves of. And I think is to accept that what happened to accept that Labour is no longer, and hasn't been for a long time, primarily a party for working people. That people have to let go. They still think that somehow if Jeremy Corbyn they still, and I don't have anything except for him like being stupid on the trans issue. I have nothing but good feelings for Jeremy Corbyn, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. And yeah, he got smeared as being an anti-Semite, and it was all whatever. But what happened. Now it's Keir Starmer's party. Deal with it. Let it be. Got to do something else. And it's the same thing over on the other side of the pond with the Democratic Party. You still have people to this day taking Bernie Sanders seriously.
Yeah.
It's like you have John Cusack. Jesus, you were out with Arundhati Roy. hanging out with Snowden in a Russia hotel. I don't know what's going on with this dude. And yet he still will share Bernie Sanders tweets like that fucker's trustworthy. It's like when he showed you 5 times how he is, believe it. He will always take the knee for the Democratic Party. Talk is great. He's not an idiot. He's aware of the function he serves in that organization. He's aware of it. But he played, I don't know if he's in cognitive dissonance. But still, well, Bernie said this, or well, AOC this. I'm like, please accept it. Accept the fact that this idea of a progressive Democrat revolutionizing the Democratic Party, or somehow the Labor going back to whatever, is not going to happen.
No.
Not going to happen. So, anyway, I just wanted to put
no, and Corbyn wouldn't be any good for Scotland
on
anyway,
that, because I've been hearing these people tweeting Bernie Sanders quotes to the DNC like it freaking means anything. I'm like, you should be irritated every time this guy plays this performance for you. Please. I get he's lovely, cool, fine, but hello. No. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, I must be like, I want to be fooled. Fool me more. Anyway, sorry. So, Labor is not for Labor's not Labor. Labor's not for Labor. And the Democrats aren't democratic. So we have
Scotland
that in common. So go ahead, please continue.
But Scotland knows that. Labour has been dead in Scotland since the vow, shortly after the right before the independence vote, like days or a week before the independence vote, they trotted out Gordon Brown to make all these promises about kind of devolution, essentially saying that Scotland,
I didn't even know he was still alive.
Yeah, well, Scotland was going to be given all these powers, and basically we didn't need to vote for independence because we were going to have all these powers anyway. And that was enough to swing the vote so that the referendum was a no result. And then in the days following the referendum, they basically decided that actually, no, none of that was going to happen. And Gordon Brown just sort of disappeared from public life for a while so he couldn't answer any questions. It was like one of the most shocking betrayals, a lie, and a real interference in a democratic election that, in my opinion, basically invalidates the whole fucking thing. Huge betrayal. Scottish people never forgave them for that. They've never forgiven them for being a pro-austerity, pro-war party. The fact that Labour had a swing back in Scotland in this election does not mean that Scottish people are in huge numbers suddenly have faith in Labour again. That's just not the case. I think what it was mostly a protest vote against the SNP. People are absolutely sick of the SNP. That goes for both pro-independent supporters and unionists. And I think that was the turnout was extremely low. So a lot of, I think, SNP supporters quite simply just didn't vote. One thing that I found really, Hugh Keane.
Sorry, Laura, this is for you. Laura, could you please explain?
It's insanely corrupt.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read this out loud in case for people who aren't watching but are listening later. And if I ever get around to putting stuff on Spotify, oh my God. Laura, could you please explain? I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not a funny question. I'm going to get serious now. Laura, could you please explain how corrupt Scottish politics is and how the institutions work together to destroy Alex Salmond?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna see a lot more coming out about this in the next year. But essentially,
can you say who the Alex Salmond is, because a lot of people won't know.
Right.
I've heard the name, but I don't know the whole.
So the former head of the SNP, he was First Minister for God, I don't know how many years, a long time. He brought us from polling about something like, I can't remember what the numbers. It was very low percentage were in favor of independence anyway when he came in, and then took us to very close to actually getting our independence in the referendum. Got us the referendum. A lot of the sort of progressive policies that the SNP were popular for in the early days, that was under Salmond, and they still trot them out now as examples of how great they are. And it's like, well, yeah, but you haven't done anything in the last 10 years except sell off all our resources and privatize everything, and give yourself lots of money to set up think tanks and basically, yeah, the whole thing is insanely corrupt. I mean, it was corrupt before. Labour was insanely corrupt when they were in power in Scotland, and everybody just moaned about how corrupt they were all the time. And when you talk about corruption in Scotland, it's like, it's gangsters. They're gangsters all the way up. As gangsters, from local councillors to right at the very top. The Labour head in Glasgow is a heroin dealer. A lot of these guys, they get their money from dealing heroin. That's as blatant as the corruption is. And when my major hope when the SNP came in, for example, was that they were going to overhaul the homelessness system, because there was a bit of legislation that came out right at the start of the SNP's time in government in majority. It was like, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's like the Scotland Housing Act or something. It basically enshrines in law the right to housing. So if you present as homeless at your council, your local council, office for homelessness, they have to find you a place to stay that night, and they have to find a way of trying to get you into more permanent accommodation after that. And actually, it was a Labour policy. Labour came up with it, but the SNP brought it in and then boasted about it a lot, right? And I thought, right, okay, we've got this legal right to housing and we've got a homelessness system that is failing to house people constantly. And over the years, the councils, Glasgow City Council has been taken to court numerous times. They've been investigated by the Scottish government for constantly failing to house people. And I was hopeful that basically when the SNP came in, not that this would be solved overnight, but that there would be a greater transparency and honesty about what the situation was, and the fact that this legislation hadn't been properly applied, and the fact that there isn't enough supply of social housing. And that the problem with that, because the outcome of each of these investigations has always been, we need to work on our relationships with social landlords. Now, there's no emphasis, there's no obligation of any kind being put on these social landlords. It's like, hey, can we have a bit more public housing? No. Okay, never mind. That's it. That's how
it's like, what does one have to be a social landlord? Is it just like trying to get people to be more moral and have lower rents? Or is there actually like a program where they get subsidized?
No, so Labour's brilliant idea back in the 90s was that instead of having council housing that was managed and owned, run by the council, was that we would basically put all that housing in the control of housing associations, which were supposed to be local kind of housing management companies that were that answerable to the communities that they served. So there was supposed to be tenant participation. You'd have tenants sitting on the board. Like there would be kind of some kind of involvement in decision-making processes. And the idea was that these were supposed to be quite small local things that would manage housing in a certain area. Instead, what happened, which was basically always the intention, was that it was just a privatization, mass privatization of social housing. And it happened across Scotland, but in Glasgow it was successful. They did the stock transfer all in one go. They basically said, we're going to let these lovely social landlords, housing associations, manage all the housing stock. And it's been a disaster because they just want to make profit. So they're like, oh, well, we don't get much rent
income. It seems like, do you think that was kind of like the intention to kind of slow walk it a bit? So they thought, okay, if we directly privatize and do it and call it what it is, that'll cause a problem. But if we go through this in between or intermediary phase of social housing with these grassroots organizations, and then it just kind of, and then we end up with the privatization. Do you think it was that
yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, I think
Okay.
profit drives everything. The idea that these ideas come from nowhere, that there isn't a guy at the top going, "Hey, we can make millions and millions of pounds out of
We'll
this."
just call it new public management. But what it
Yeah.
really is fire sale prices of
Well, it's
public and
give us all control of all the.
yeah.
Mhm. But
Okay.
also, you get public money
Mm.
because you get to say you're performing a public service for the good of the. So give us public funding for this. So this is what's happening in our neighborhood.
They were
They're getting
the dispossession, the conversion of council housing into private housing via the name social housing was also paid for with tax dollars.
It's
Well, that's
amazing.
nice.
We
I
lose
gotta
out.
get more. I gotta get more devious. I need to get in on that money train.
But this is
I'm gonna open an NGO
But
tomorrow.
this is Scotland. Everyone has to get paid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has to get paid in Scotland. So there's always like all these extra people. And this is Sturgeon's government was all about this, like job creation and creating salaries and grants for her pals, basically. And then and that's how you control things, you know? You put all these people in position that are only there because you've fucking given them that position and allocated funds to them, and then you own them and you pull all the strings. But
this sounds a lot like local Mumbai politics, I have to say. Interesting enough. And I knew, I mean, that's a different issue.
It is. This is what Scotland
I
is
did a
like.
lot because most of my professional, that's the word,
surface.
research,
Yeah.
you know, because of clientelism and kind of, you know, this kind of institutional capture and all this rigmarole, as well as the criminalization of politics and the politics of politicization of crime and all this stuff. Because I remember thinking at first, it was like, I feel like when I kept on when I was in India, the few municipalities I was studying, I kept on thinking back like Tammany Hall and like these kind of like, you know, machine politics and all this. I thought, this is weird. But apparently I don't have to go back that far. I can just go over to Scotland.
It's honest. Tara, this campaign in the Wineford, it's been like living in an episode of The Wire. It is honestly like living in an episode of The Wire. My eyes have been opened to like I always knew it was corrupt, right? But there was this kind of disconnect between like how it actually connects to like, you know, organized crime and like, but it's like now I can see it all so clearly. Like it's all the steps and where the links in the chain are and how the like high level legitimate, you know, white collar crime is actually connected to the like the horrible abusive drug stuff at the bottom. So like for one example, I'm all about housing, so there are probably other brilliant examples in all sorts of fields other than housing. For example, there's like all the drug stats that came out this week, and there's a lot of stuff around that being discussed. I'm not an expert in that, but obviously the homeless situation isn't helping that. So we've got all these people stuck in these hellhole hotels, and those are being exploited like crazy by drug dealers and by pimps, you know, who are basically trafficking girls in those hotels for sex. So on a very basic level there, you've got a market has been created. And I'm not saying that this virtuous cycle is all like happening, like, you know, consciously, like that everybody is, it's just that everybody plays their part in the system, right? So you got all these people, this captive market for drugs in the hotel. There's hundreds of people. We're spending $500 a week on keeping homeless people in these hotels that, you know, you don't have a sink, you don't have access to somewhere to cook. You've got people wandering in and out of your room. There's no security. You've got guys trying to get you to have sex with them. You've got people trying to sell you drugs. You've got violence, people getting stabbed, people dying regularly. I thought mostly of overdoses, but they actually only account for a small amount of the drugs, of the deaths, sorry, in these hotels. So that begs the question, what are people dying of at such huge rates in these hotels? But most of these hotels are owned by two families who are making millions, who've made millions off the homeless crisis in the last 10 years. 500 a week when you could pay their rent. It would be cheaper. It would be hugely cheaper to get these people out of hotels and in a proper flat and actually just pay their fucking rent for them. But everything is backwards. Everything is backwards in this country. And there's always like 5 people that are getting paid salaries along the way that are making money out of it. And it's all all allowed to happen. And so on our doorstep, we've got this £100 million, demolition and land grab that's going on. And to justify it, what do? They run down your scheme for years. They fail to make repairs. They have an allocation policy that is designed to make people feel like, oh, I hate those flats. They're full of asylum seekers and drug dealers. Nobody wants those people living here. They encourage racists in the community. They encourage drug dealing and crime in our community. And then you turn to the police and you say, well, what about this? And it turns out the police are working with them. And they're working with Wheatley. And instead of chasing drug pushers, they're spying on tenants in the community that are worried about the demolition plans and the plans for regeneration. But this happens everywhere. It's like as soon as the council wants to sell a building in Glasgow, it goes on fire mysteriously. Like the connections between actual gangsters and the gangsters like Sturgeon that have been running the show, they're very clear. They're very direct. And
I didn't know that. I should have had to compare. I should have been comparing what was going on in the periphery of Mumbai with Scotland, because this sounds like. And I remember when you mentioned that that you didn't, even though you knew these things went on, you didn't know how systemic it was or how enmeshed the different actors were. And I remember. One of my friends, I felt it was a contact, but I've developed a friendship over the years because I've been working in the same municipality since my research master's. And he said, Tara, you have to accept you're asking about boundaries. You think there's these cut lines, and there's not, between the party, between the bureaucracy, and between what they would call like the land mafia or the water mafia, cement mafia. That there's no like you have for the show, you have to play the blame game and the whatever, but behind the scenes it works quite well.
And the middle classes
and the real political battle is over who's going to be calling the shots from election to election, not anybody really wanting to change how the game is played. He's like, you should just accept this. And I was like, okay, I do, but I have to be able to prove it in like some crazy paper that's acceptable. But it was just funny. And once I thought, okay, I'm going to assume this is the case, and then everything that seemed to be really weird just kind of fell into place when I was trying to understand, okay, what's going on in this sector? What's going on with this land development thing? I'm like, oh, okay, well, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's hard to, because you want, and I don't know, you don't want to, I don't know. You just feel like, well, okay, yeah, there's corruption. Yeah, there's some crime. Yeah, there's some this and that. But like, really, the whole system is... it's like this, and that's why it's like, should even use the word corrupt when the exception is the rule, and they have to figure out, well, how is the exception structured anyway.
And there's
this sounds crazy. I mean, I knew that I heard some stories, but I didn't realize it was so Peaky Blinders, although that wasn't in Scotland, was it?
Very similar. That could have been,
I'm like, all right.
There's there's this veneer of respectability as well that our politicians have. It's like in our neighborhood, for example. So we've got some dodgy stuff going on where there's pushers are basically, I think, being encouraged by the authorities and funded and allowed to get away with stuff in order to deliberately run down our scheme and prepare it for further demolitions in the future, which they will definitely come along and say, oh, this is a bad area because this is going on, or, we have reasons to believe. Anyway, so I believe that is their plan.
Well, Sturgeon is some sort of like mafia queen, then, you could say.
Well, that's not Sturgeon. So that is Wheatley, the Wheatley group. They are just gangsters, so it is not beyond the Wheatley group's ability to just pay guys to go in and set fire to buildings, for example. The way it's happening in the Wynford is a little bit less direct, so you can set up a group and then you can kind of like point them at another group, and it's all been a bit like that. But the thing is, like, in a community like this, so it'll be like, oh, well, this is horrible. You've got guys are targeting children, they're putting people at risk, they're targeting young girls. Someone should stand up to them, someone should put some social pressure on them. And people don't want to talk about it because They don't want to get labeled as a grass. They don't want to get firebombed or their kids get stabbed
I'm
in the
sorry,
street.
what's a grass? Is it like
Grass
a
would be
rat? Like somebody who like rats somebody out? Okay.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's the worst thing you can possibly be in a working class area in Glasgow. Nobody would call the police, even if you did something wrong. People don't generally call the police around here unless it's just something really serious. But even then, you'll get shit for it. But it's the same with our politicians. So you've got guys that are councillors or MSPs, or they're hoping to be, in the Labour Party, for example. And they don't want to touch it. And the reason they don't want to touch it is because they don't want to make waves, and they want to make sure that they get selected by their colleagues for candidate positions and all the rest of it. And it's the same fear. It's just that on our level, the fear in our community is I don't want to get stabbed, and for them is I don't want to lose my career. It's a little bit less urgent for them, but again, they all make the same decisions time and time again. They won't challenge the drugs in the same way that they won't challenge Wheatley, because yes, they can see that what they're doing is blatantly immoral and corrupt and wrong, but they can't challenge them without that threatening their interests. And that would be like, well, you're not going to get selected if you're having to go at Wheatley all the time when the guys that run your political party sit on the board of the Wheatley group. Obviously. So they're going, oh, well, I'll make this sacrifice now so that I can get into a position of power.
Yeah, and then later on,
and then I'll challenge all the corruption. Once I'm part of the system, I'll
and then you end up being Bernie Sanders at 80 or something. Still having it's like never having done it. No, and I can understand. I can understand the flack. So like it's like also that okay, if you don't want to participate, fine, but we all know that there's certain things that you have to pretend not to know or to go along to get along, and this idea that it's not that if it's so the way things are. And if you end up being they'll probably just, even if you try to, and then you have the thing that can happen, that if you're trying to go against the corruption, they'll bring corruption charges against you, for a variety of things. So I can appreciate that the lone person, and also, I mean, whatever you have to believe that helps you not to have to risk these things, of course people are going to be inclined to believe.
Well, that's another thing.
And if everyone around you is going along with it, you're like, well,
they don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe that it's going on because it's too ugly and it's too hard to deal with. So I think there's a lot of that, a lot of denial. I just want to respond to Hugh if I can.
Please do.
Because just one other thing that we've kind of become aware of recently that is really worrying is that like homelessness and mental health and drug charities are being infiltrated by organized crime gangs, and that they're actually using these as both a cash cow and a way of recruiting vulnerable people to buy off them and to work for them. And we've a lot of evidence of this. We've spoken to journalists who have seen it happening elsewhere as well. So you've got a real lack of safeguarding. It should be really, for example, a woman that runs a homelessness charity on the south side of Glasgow, her son went to prison a couple of weeks ago because he was caught with £50,000 worth of heroin. Now he was living in the house with her. Now she drives £165,000 car. Her husband supposedly runs a landscaping firm, so maybe that's where the money comes from. But the idea that somebody whose son is clearly a high-level heroin dealer could still be running a charity that deals with vulnerable, homeless, and addicted people. Come on, people, like, no. Even if she was completely innocent of the fight, even if she had no idea her son was selling heroin.
Now I know what you mean by an episode of The Wire, and I don't know if it was The Wire, but it was some other place that was like you actually would send people to go to like AA meetings and whatnot to try to get the people who obviously would be, susceptible to falling off the wagon.
They're like vultures circling. But the sad thing is, all you need is a nice, but all you need is a nice middle class face to work as the front for your for your,
Drug ring.
scheme. Who can make it look nice, who can make noises on Twitter, who can invite the professionals in, who can have the little sort of corporate events where they're like, oh, look what we're doing for the poor, impoverished, druggy people, that can't help themselves. We're here to save them. And you're lining your pockets and you're letting these guys recruit them for organized crime. So yeah, the situation is really, really dire, obviously, on the ground and politically. But for what Hugh was saying, like I think most people in Scotland are on the same page. We're sick of the SNP because they didn't deliver what we wanted, but we do have a majority for independence, and I think we are pretty clear what the arguments for that are. We want our own resources and control of our own resources so we can actually pay to solve some of these problems. And we could solve some of these problems. And there's a lot of just blatant incompetence that's going on that could be easily solved. Like actually easily. It's not a matter of not having the resources for it.
Oh, this is you. Yeah, we covered this though, because I clipped some of your tweets just in case I forgot. We covered this.
Indeed, like if we.
Yeah. So just Laura saying the housing crisis is not being driven by immigration refugees. It's the result of the privatization of council housing. Companies like Wheatley demolishing tens of thousands of public homes for profit, and the failure to build. This crisis is driven by profit. Yeah, we've been talking about this, and I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that I can't imagine why some of the problems that you just talked about in regards to homeless and other vulnerable populations and the NGOs that become fronts for nefarious activities, or money laundering is also a nefarious activity. And then when you have these kind of nice things where they'll pair up with somebody's, some philanthropist and a couple of researchers. And I was thinking the same thing, because when I was reading something again about just every once in a while there'll be a few articles about the homelessness crisis in American cities. And again, you find a lot of that. I haven't dug into it, but you find a lot of things. If you look at like the money that's been thrown at it, but then the money gets gobbled up by all these in-between organizations. And then there's always this constant thing, like it's so complicated and it's complex, and we have to have this study and that study, and we're going to follow along. And then you have the various buzzwords and the concepts change, and they care all this data, and then they're going to call them unhoused instead of homeless and whatever. And it's like, really, is it really difficult? Homeless people, it's right there in the name, need a place to stay. And then you also need to have, there could be alcoholism, drug issue, either what precipitated them ending up on the homeless, or what happened after they became homeless. Yeah, you need that, but it's not rocket science. And there's so many people, even people who I think they're doing a good thing. There's such a racket. There's no incentive to really solve this problem, because then all this in between stuff would go away. And who wants that? In addition to the people who are using it for really, for the really nefarious purposes. But even if you look at it and you realize that, the people, it's just the path to hell paved with good intentions, that what they're really doing is perpetuating the life of the organization, not actually addressing the homelessness issue. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure this is not just with homelessness or housing. I'm sure it's with a variety of things. We've had so much buildup of the NGOs and this and that. And then you have the fantastic researchers who are going to go in and they're going to study it, and they're going to study it a bit more, and they're going to study a bit more, and there's going to be more talk, and there's going to be talk. While people's lives just get churned up. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of parallels, but I didn't realize, and why would I? Because I haven't been in Scotland or remember that I didn't realize that it was such a Guy Ritchie movie. I didn't know.
It is. Yeah,
I'm guessing these characters are less attractive than some of his leading men, but I don't know. Not that there aren't attractive Scotsmen. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I didn't know that it was. Let's see. Hugh wants to get you in trouble. No. Let's see. Hugh, does Laura know the names of? Okay. I don't know if she's going to name the names, but
Does he own Scotland's media?
Yeah. So does Laura know the names of those who own Scotland's media and also play a role in covering up Scottish corruption? She may need to DM you this information, Hugh. So Laura,
I'm not. No, this is not my area of expertise. So maybe Hugh knows more about this than me.
So, so who owns the
obviously
media?
that's a thing. Kind of sick of Scotland's media. It's been really hard for us as well in this campaign to like, trying to get a story out there is really difficult. Everybody's got their fucking if they're not SNP, like defending Sturgeon, or the Greens, like fucking National does, then it's Labour, and they only want to frame a story in a way that is gonna make Labour look like the good guys. So getting your message out the way you want is always kind of difficult. You just go with whoever who will help you kind of amplify it. But certainly at the moment in Scotland, we've got a real kind of there's a lot of pro-Labour journalists that are trying to kind of frame all this as a nationalism problem.
Would the owners of the major media outlets in Scotland, I'm guessing they've probably become centralized as much as everybody else's has, or not, maybe not, but would they be that different from the people that try to control the English press? I mean, does Murdoch not care about
no, they're largely unionist. Our only kind of pro-independence paper is the National, which is meh. it was very Sturgeonite for many years. Very, very easy on the Greens. They have Owen Jones writes a bloody piece for them. I don't understand why he's.
That reminds me, I wanted to ask you,
especially because he came up to Glasgow and talked about
Oh, sorry. If you want to finish about Owen, I just wanted to ask you, because I remember in a couple of your tweets, you there seems to be no love between you and the Scottish Greens, and I was wondering if you could let us know why. What's the issue? What's your beef with those nice Scottish Greens?
They're the worst. They're just absolute worst. For a start, they're not green. They're the absolute abysmal on the environment. That was one of the things I wanted to say about the recap from the election. Like the one really, really annoying thing that came out of the election was that the Greens were untouched. Their voter base doesn't care that they have been supporting neoliberal austerity policies for years, that they slashed our bloody housing budget, that they slashed our teaching budget, that they break their own promises on the environment constantly. But their middle-class voter base does not care. They will keep voting for them regardless. That seems to be what I took from the election.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect them. Because austerity doesn't affect them the same way as it affects working class people. And they vote based on vibes. They vote based on, like, I think they chime with my values.
Oh, they would love the DNC then. They'd be having a great time. They'd be having a great time in Chicago right now.
Very similar.
With hotties for Kamala and, joy and, woohoo.
But I get very angry because...
There's twerking.
Yeah. But I'm Alpa, right? So, my sister, for example, is a conservationist. She works with seabirds. I am very concerned about the environment. But I'm a member of ALPA, and so I need to make the argument for why I think it's important to keep Scotland's only oil refinery open, and why I don't want to sell off all our oil and gas to these giant tycoons like the bloody Green Party do. And Nick actually got one of the heads of the Green Party to admit on Twitter that their interest is just getting rid of all the oil and gas as opposed to actually figuring out a way to do a green transition, because it's just like it's an easy thing that they can do in the So I'm stuck in this position where basically, unless you say I want to end all oil and gas right now,
which is like a death wish,
then you obviously don't care about the environment. But I think that's absolute nonsense, because actually selling off or essentially gifting all our natural resources to these external companies is not going to help us to have a greener future and do the green transition thing. What we want is to have, and also it won't stop oil and gas. So the Greens might say they want an end to oil and gas, but is there a single Green politician who has said that they want to end the import of oil and gas? because until they say that, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Because what
And
they
also
want
I
to
wonder if
Sorry.
I wonder if any of them know that it's not just electricity that we need energy for. I really think that some of them aren't aware of this. That it's like, if you think about all the energy that we need for our quote unquote industrial or modern society, whatever you want to call it, about 20% of that is electricity.
Mhm.
And so even if you had all electricity provided by renewables, which you can't, and also the idea that whereas wind and the sun are renewable, windmills and solar power panels are not.
Mhm.
And no one wants just like, but it's this
Yeah.
idea that you still have 80% of your energy needs. Where are you going to get that from? You're not getting it from the sun, not direct. I mean, you're not getting it from solar panels, and you're not getting it from windmills. And plus, if you like having power 24/7, that's not enough either.
But
But they
we're
just
but
love
we're on
this
track.
idea, and it's like
Yeah.
or they don't really realize that like plastics come from oil
Yeah.
and like all this stuff. And then, I mean, if they really, I think they should go and live someplace without oil and gas, and they can have windmills and they can have solar panels,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's all they can have. And they should go there for
But
a
I mean,
month or so, and then
I
they should
want an end
report
to,
back
yeah,
about how we're going to scale
Mhm.
that up.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like, and then they get mad at you. It's the same thing. It's like well, I guess I probably also get mad when people touch my ideological teddy bears and nighttime stories. But it's like, it's like people just want to shoot the messenger or smear the messenger. It's like, look, I wish that we could get all the power we need from the technology we have now when it comes from wind and solar, but we can't. So, and I'm also not going to tell countries that are,
Well, we're very
have
close to
extremely
that in
high
Scotland.
poverty rate, like, that to be like, oh, well, you guys don't get to, you got to leave that coal and gas in the ground, brother. It's like, what?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very weird. It's very Malthusian death wish. I don't understand it. Well, I do understand it, but I don't see how it's green. They just go, and
Mhm.
it's this thing like you just say something's green, and all of a sudden you can't say anything about it because it's green, and green by
Mhm.
definition is good. It's like, well, no. I call it green
Mhm.
lighting. I don't know if I probably didn't coin that phrase, but I have a big green light, and I used to put it on people's tweets all the time before October 7th happened. I was like, "You're green light," and they get mad at me, like, "Oh, you just are a shill." I'm like, yeah, I'm a shill. Like, where I wish I had that oil and gas money. And he's paying me. Ah! Anyway,
But I mean,
so
an end
Mhm.
an end to oil and gas is a perfectly reasonable thing for us to be moving towards, and obviously Scotland has like brilliant natural resources, and we are on track to be able to create all our energy greenly. um, but in the meantime, they want us paying a premium, exporting our oil, and then paying extra to get it back refined, which
Mhm. Yeah.
is nuts. So we have all this oil, we're still using it. Let's keep our refinery and keep
Mhm.
those jobs, and let's keep our resources, and let's have control over our resources so that we
Mhm.
can then choose how that money gets invested. And then it's up to
Mhm.
us if we want to invest it in green technologies and green industries. It's not up to some bloody, do you know what I mean? It's just stop
Mhm.
giving everything away, people. But this is, like Nick says, this is them seeing independence on the horizon, and basically transnational capital, the UK or England, trying to strip us of all our assets before we get
Beforehand. Okay, so yeah, that would make sense. Like, okay, you want independence first? We're gonna get rid of everything. We're gonna get everything out of you that we can, and then once we're not interested
and the
anymore,
Greens will help
then
them.
we'll leave you like we left Afghanistan. So, not that
Yeah,
was funny, but it's like once it's not for work for us anymore, and then fine, then you can be independent.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
Greens will help them. So yeah, no, if it. But then when it comes to
Mm.
retrofitting, which the Greens said they were going to do, which is a really obvious way of helping the environment. Like, don't blow stuff up, don't build new all the time, retrofit old buildings. Uh,
Mm.
it's really fucking obvious,
Mhm.
and they won't do it.
Mhm.
They won't support it because then they'd have to challenge the Wheatley Group. And
So they have to
instead,
do more, and
they
then they
go
have,
along
and
to
doesn't it
housing
also
conferences and events.
take more work? I mean, it's easy just to be like to sell things off and to say, oh, we need to have, to be in love with windmills and solar panels, but to actually uh do what you need to do to have a more of your energy grid, to the extent that's even possible, because again, you don't get 24/7 hour power from renewable sources, especially, and so if people don't embrace nuclear, they're just really living in a fantasy world, um, based on the technology that we have now. If you really want to keep a lot of oil in the ground, then you need to embrace nuclear. But that's also been like, because of
Mm.
obviously bad things have happened, and people think they just think everything's a Chernobyl around the corner. But anyway, that's a different thing.
Yeah, I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
could you think that's it? That it's just easier, this kind of,
Yeah.
ladies
Why?
and guys who lunch type
Wh-
of politics is easier than actually having to build things.
Why would you do it? Why would you do it when? Well, if your voter base is going to keep supporting you regardless, why do all the hard work of actually standing up for working people or the environment?
Yeah.
I mean, they literally this last election has just proven that point for them. I think
Hmm.
just keep going with the woke, identity politics stuff. Give
Hmm.
off the right vibes, and it doesn't really matter what you do because it doesn't affect your
Hmm.
voters are middle
Hmm.
class people that are voting for you in order to signal that they have a certain set of values.
Hmm.
You know, um,
Hmm. They're the good guys.
and the left needs to stop letting them away with it. The left needs to
Hmm.
stop pretending that this is a lovely
Hmm.
social democratic party that cares about working people and asylum seekers and housing and the environment. It's maddening.
Hmm.
But a lot of these people, like the careerism and the corruption
Hmm.
extends to obviously our institutions, which are,
Hmm.
basically crushed and destroyed and weakened
Hmm.
anyway. But now you have a bunch of progressive graduates scrabbling for positions in the trade union movement or what have you,
Hmm.
and then they become co-opted, and they don't
Hmm.
want to rock the boat or upset their pals. Yeah, everybody's trying
Hmm.
to get paid.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of having your cake and eating it too. So you want to be able to signal that you have the right values and you think the right way on things, but yet you also want to have, yeah, the nice career and
Yeah,
all these
and
things
it's
and to go along.
worse.
And I think we were talking about
Legitimately.
this. It's a theme that came up. Was it yesterday? I can't even remember anymore. When Alexander McKay from the Marx, I always want to say Marx, Lenin, Engels. That's not right. Marx, Engels Institute. And we are talking about cultural Marxism, and one of the things that Zuleika tweeted afterwards in reference to the show is that we need a divorce. There's certain things that we need to disabuse ourselves of, and certain people who we think are allies or that we think we can make into allies that we need to realize are not our allies. And I think that part of this is in places where the left has been so weakened, actual left, so class and capital, working class people, this type of, not this all this other, identity politics and bourgeois enlightenment bullshit, whatever. Um, that's been so weakened and demoralized, and so there's been this thing that we have to somehow, again, this thing like, well, like the Democrats can be turned progressive, like there could be a progressive Democrat that could actually mean more than just talk, or to show like, oh look, we listen, we're a big tent, so we'll listen to everybody, and then we're just going to keep on doing these neoliberal policies with just a nice, patina of color. Um, and to be willing to be like, better to be small in number, but principled and dedicated than to this current thing that gets us nowhere. It's just further
Yeah,
liquidation. That the Green Party is not going to get us where we want to
yeah,
go. The
and you can
Labor
achieve
Party
a
maybe
lot with a
isn't
small
the
group
Labor
of
Party
people.
of 50 years ago. The Democrats were, I mean, fine, FDR saved capitalism and did the New Deal that did allow for a flourishing, for a few decades of a growing middle class, primarily white, but whatever it was. But that is a blip. That was a blip. And we need to accept it and get serious and be willing to say no to stuff that is so counter to what we want, even if it means hurting somebody's feelings. Or I know, I realize it's easier said than done, but it just seems that this current thing that the quote unquote left has morphed into is also sick and can't really do much.
There's another good Nick-ism that he uses, which is that he says the left is dead and something else is wearing its skin.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the perfect way of putting it. You see all these women going like, oh, the left, oh, you're left-wing women, oh, you're trying to throw us to the wolves, like, with your leftiness. And it's like, like, well, what the mistake that the left made was that they decided that we were fascists, thus completely watering down the definition of fascism, and also the whole concept of the United Front, which is supposed to be where we can have discussions, we can disagree with each other, but we can be civil and have discussions up to a certain point. But once you're one of these guys that actually thinks we should just go around and, kill people and control them and all the rest of it, no, we say no to fascism, we say no to Nazis. You are not part of the discourse. We all of us, including the slightly right-wing people, all together collectively say no to you because you want to basically kill people and make them less safe. And that was a perfectly reasonable position for a long time. For in Belgium, for example, you're not allowed to be a Nazi party, or you're not supposed to be. They find ways around it. But one of the biggest parties got shut down because it was like there was a court case and they decided, no, you are Nazis. You're not allowed to be Nazis and be in government. That's not happening. Britain got a bit weird about all this around the time that the EDL started stomping around, and we all decided that it was very important to give airtime to Nazis and to listen to fascists and pay attention to them and all the rest of it.
Poor Greta. Greta got she became a victim of her own popularity, I think, and too wooed by the Bill Gateses and the Bill Clintonses and all this stuff. Yeah.
But now you have this situation that so a lot of these women were called fascists for years, and you're going, oh, you're fascist because you don't want men in women's spaces. And like that became common parlance. And now that some of those same women have turned around and gone, well, maybe I'm a fascist. Yeah, if that's what a fascist is, maybe that's what I am. Maybe it's not so bad. So this whole idea of the United Front, you can't have a United Front if you're just going to call everyone who disagrees with your values, your social values, a fascist and a Nazi. That this is a mistake that was made by the left, obviously, and no one knows that better than us because we went through it. We do not need right-wing women to explain this to us.
It's like, you think we're the first people to confront this? Yeah, no, but also I think what's odd, and I don't know, it must be because we still live in,
that it lost all meaning
because of capitalism. That since the task remains for any actual left to try to confront the core antagonisms of it, to how do you deal with the capital labor contradiction and the other ones that flow from that, that's why, because it doesn't matter how weak the left gets, and by left I mean like class and capital, working class left. It doesn't matter how weak that gets. It's still everybody, like communism is right around the corner and everybody's a communist. And if there aren't actual communists, you'll just call anything you don't like communist. So gender ideology is communist, and the idea that white people are born with original race sin is communist, and then everything's communist. Like, if Foucault's a communist and Derrida's a communist, everybody's a communist, anti-communists are communists, all communists. And it's like,
yeah.
And in one way, be like, okay, well, they wouldn't have this much, even if they're just spoofing, if they think they're just getting, using a convenient term that still has negative connotations. Although I don't know with the younger generations if this still works as much as it does with boomers and late Xers. But but it's almost like there's a haunting. It's almost like the people know that at a certain point this can't go on. I think about that quote from
Yeah.
Batman Returns or Batman Dark Knight when Selena Kyle says, like, did you all think you could live large forever and no one, like, it would never end? Like, when,
Yeah.
better batten down the hatches because
Yeah.
maybe there's kind of like there's like this collective ill ease because there's just this realization that it can't go on, like that there is a sickness, that there's the problems that the system is creating, that it can't push down the road that much anymore,
Yeah.
or down the road or to the other side of the road.
Yeah.
It's crazy
Which
to
has
me when
led
I
to this
started
whole thing
seeing
that
that,
I
like,
keep
this whole
hearing.
thing that with Trump,
Yeah.
again, to end where we started, this idea that Trump, whoever's running his campaign, is like trying to do the campaign for Mitt Romney when they're trying to paint Obama as a communist. It's like, really? Everything you could go with, you're going to go with Kamala as a communist?
Yeah.
And they think this is going to work?
Yeah.
I mean, it might. God, who knows? Who knows?
But see,
But
this
it's
whole
like,
this
really?
whole thing.
So you can be a total corporatist capitalist and still be called a communist if it by the other corporatist capitalist.
Yeah. And it's
And
I
then we
mean,
think,
this is what this whole thing has
know.
been
Go ahead.
this is what this whole thing has been for, right? So, like, I never thought of Posey Parker, for example, or people like that as being active agents in this. But I always felt like, or have felt for a long time, that this whole culture war is being used to undermine actual left-wing activities. Like, that is a huge function of it. It serves to obviously make a lot of money for big pharma and all the rest of it, but also it's been a great way for example, the SNP to purge all its left-wing and feminist activists, for the Greens to dismiss anybody that challenges their policies as, oh, just a bigot, so it's very useful in that sense. And what you've got is a lot of women who found themselves politically homeless and who decided that the terms right and left no longer mean anything. And this is happening obviously a lot. So if you look at the Trump thing, for example, well, no, Trump isn't a good, but if you look at the alt-right in America and the sort of stuff that they say, and you take, for example, what are they? The Boogaloo Boys or something. I read their manifesto, right? And if you actually took that side by side with most like kind of far left manifestos, not a huge amount of difference.
No.
Between them. So an end to foreign wars, less incarceration. There's a lot of stuff that, they want reindustrialization, they want investment in infrastructure. None of these things are being promised to them in any way by Trump.
No.
But these are all actually, these are things that are about the working class. So now the left has become the elitists who are more interested in identity politics and respectability than they are in actually improving the material conditions of working people. It's actually the right that is standing up for that. And so you've got all this confusion going on where it's like the right is kind of like the more working class. The left are the elitists, and while they've been building this up for ages. But then the one big difference, the major difference, obviously, between the right and the left is the ethnic stuff. The racism is the most important part of it. If there was a way of removing the racism from the right and only being left with all the nice stuff where they care about working class,
there's left racism, baby. You know that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what the left and the right are defined by. So instead of thinking, the left is Greens and progressive people in the SNP and trans rights,
the left might try to save you, but it's still a racist premise.
The left is still the left. There's just a lot of people calling themselves the left that just don't care about it.
I also wonder, though, I think they might be
Marxism-
ready to get rid of this whole thing, because you can have leftists and rightists, but I don't know where if you want to have a Marxist politics, I don't know if, and of course they didn't talk in those terms back then. Doesn't mean they're not meaningful now. But I think if you have a car, the left side of the car, the right side of the car have the same car. So you have a left side and a right side of what?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, is that with liberalism, like classic liberalism, so not like liberal like woohoo anything goes, although it's kind of gone into that libertinism, is that you have, like with the Republicans, it's so weird with the common sense usage, but the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are both liberal, in terms of their in terms of the like the political economy, in terms of classic liberal. But it's on these social issues, what we now call cultural issues, where there's some difference. And that's where they get the money from their voter base. That's how they mobilize the people. On one side, it's abortion, it's guns, it's family values, etc. Also various racist dog whistles. And on the other side, you have some of that too, but it's more condescension with their racism, though there could be other aspects of it. And then it's like, oh no, they're going to take away your abortion rights. They're going to make everybody have a gun. They're going to get rid of all environmental protection if you don't vote for us and give us money. But yet, just like we know that time and time again, and I'll show this issue, that there's a perverse incentive in this current left-right system against actually resolving policies. It's better to keep them open. And here's just one example of that, because they're going to be talking a lot about the right to choose, women's right to choose. We'll just forget for a moment they think that a woman is whoever says they are. But since 1977, Democrats have had several opportunities to codify abortion at the national level, and they have not done it. And one of the reasons why they haven't done it is very cynical, is because it helps get them votes. And it's good for campaign contributions and good for getting out the vote. And it's kind of ironic, really, that one of the things that Trump can tout is that he put the 3 conservative justices on the court, and they overturned Roe versus Wade. But actually, in terms of politically, that was bad, because then they can't really run on it anymore, because now it's not at the national level, because now it's returned to the states. And also, what no one wants to admit is that Roe versus Wade was a terrible case. But it also shows that the court, of course, is going to deal with legal precedents, but they're also going to stick their finger up in the air and see which way the cultural winds are blowing. But the idea that we'll just keep this in the courts and that we're not going to have to ever deal with it in the deliberative wing. They've had decades to do it, and they haven't. But they won't. But this all gets memory hold. No, they were always, did everything they could to protect the women's reproductive rights, and it was Trump who just got rid of it. I mean, it's such a game, and I don't know why we play it. I guess a lot of us don't, because about 55. I think the biggest voting block in the states are those who don't vote. I think it's probably about a lot of people don't vote who could vote, but there's still like half the adult population still does vote for this stuff. I don't know. And I don't know. I'll probably end up voting for Jill Stein, even though she thinks trans women are women, or says she does. I'm guessing she knows this isn't true. But even though the Greens' policy on trans is whacked, some crazy person wrote that. Still, and also it doesn't mean anything, because I'm registered to vote in Oregon, and Oregon always nationally, you never know, but at the national election has been blue for a long time because of the urban vote. The governor can go back and forth, and so every once in a while they'll get a senator who's a Republican, but for the longest time now it's always gone. So my vote for Jill Stein, even though their trans policy is crazy, or their gender ideology, their gender ID, everyone should be free to be who they are and love what they like, blah 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 blah. It's like who's not saying that? You can't be what you're literally not, okay?
I hate personal freedom.
Anyway, anything you want to say before we wrap up, Laura, about anything?
Fuck Posey Parker.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, she's really trying.
That's about how coherent I am at the moment about the whole thing.
Trying to get your slide here. I hope I have it. Oh yeah, I do. Okay. So everyone who's watching or watches later, you can go and follow Laura Jones, former Decent IS, because she used to be decent before she had these crazy ideas that women are women. But at former Decent IS, and IS is capitalized. That's on her Twitter handle. And yeah, she posts regularly about the work she's doing with how in terms of housing and homelessness and Scottish politics and whatnot. Thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate your time. And we're gonna have Laura back because she's gonna tell us about how her and Nick Dury and some other people were pushed out of an organization, a housing organization, because of their position that men aren't women and women aren't men. So we got to hear about that. We got to hear about the purge. We got to hear about how you went from being decent
Well,
to
or
being
was it? Or was it?
formerly decent.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, thank you so much,
no, thank
Tara.
you. I
It's always a
always,
pleasure.
I mean, really, yeah. I mean, I like you.
I
But
like you.
sure,
Come to
I do.
Scotland.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, even now with the crime and all that, I'm like, I want to go. Oh,
It's
before you go,
great. Oh no, it is lovely. We're
before
not
we
all
go,
heroin dealers and.
well, I'm not. I can run with the bad boys. I don't want to. I don't want. I got 3 kids, but they're. Got to keep them out of. I don't want them to become drug mules or anything. But let's see. We have actually before you go, we do have a few comments. We have a few comments. Can we go through the comments before you leave? Do you have a few minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally.
So let's see. Hugh Keenan. The movements spoken of here and by Alexander mean nothing to Scots. We are not political. Well, what about Wallace? Sorry. We're not political people. We just want to get paid and be left alone. I'm not from Scotland, so I'll let you.
I think, I think there's some truth to that.
Like, he's presenting himself as being a Scottish.
Well, when we were chapping, when we were chapping doors during the election campaign, like that was the main thing that came across was like apathy and like rage at the political system. Most of it directed at the SNP, but also just generally like people are fed up. They want the NHS to not be in collapse. They want there to be homes. They want to feel like the city's getting looked after a bit, and they just don't. And yeah, no, I think in general people are pretty disillusioned with all the identity politics and don't see themselves as on one side or another of this big kind of battle between good and evil. They're just more kind of.
Ooh, it's the doggy.
Yeah, sick of the gangsters and the corruption and not hugely hopeful. Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just.
And this is just look a smoker to the gallows woman. Okay, yeah. George M. Preach. So I don't know that we'll both take that. We're both preaching, George. Yes. I'll give it to you since you're the guest. Preach, Laura, preach. Okay.
Oh dear.
Hugh Keenan. In the US, you have more freedoms to lose. Here, we're free to retreat into self-serving indulgences and vices. Well,
you need to have a
we
vice.
Have lots of self-serving indulgences and vices in the States as well. Yeah. Have you seen our portions? You can have a burger where the bun is chicken breasts. Anyway, all of it deep fried and battered. Anyway.
I know. See, I read self-serving indulgences, and I just got hungry as well. I think we're on the same. We're on the same wavelength.
Let's see. Snow Himbo, Terry, your laugh is entirely too contagious. Well, thank you. And I hope not in a bad way like Kamala. That's why I have to be careful. I can't say much about Kamala's laugh because I'll also be like, but no, I'm. I don't break out into laughter like if I don't have any idea what I'm saying. I'm very confused. Like if someone's asking me a trade question, I'd be like, oh. But who knows? I might. But thank you, Snow Himbo. I like it's always nice to get a positive comment, especially with the types of topics and questions we tend to talk about on this show. It's nice if to get it. Penguin blue waving tear. Thank you, ladies. Penguin blue waving tear. Okay. I guess that must mean something to you. He's a penguin blue waving tear. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh.
So let's see. I said contagious, not worse than oh, you're trying to make me laugh more, Snow Himbo. Come on the show, baby. We'll laugh. We'll just have an hour of laughter, right? We'll be the real joy, not the fake joy at the DNC, those crazy genocide denier crazy people. But we'll have serious joy. Even not don't need drugs to do it. Not that I'm against, people who keep it in, I'm not a prude. I would say no to the hard stuff, Kamala laugh is creepy. This is true. Okay, now we're done. All right, Laura, thank you very much. Okay. It's an emoji. Well, thank you. I knew that, but if I'm not an AI program, I'm not an AI image program where you can give me like the word prompts and then my mind just puts together. I mean, if you want to like warn me ahead of time that these are what your comments are going to be like, then I'll be like, okay, I have to take his words and then make a picture of it like I'm an AI prompt or AI prompt machine. Hugh, I don't know Hugh, but we give each other crap lovingly. All right. Okay. Thank you. See you next time. I look forward to having you back on where we can talk more about the what's going on between the GC thing, unless it gets too crazy, because that popped off a bit and I haven't been following it. But I did catch a bit of not J.K. Rowling, but Kelly J. Keane with her crown and talking. I caught a little bit of it. I was like, she's feeling it. We'll see how far it goes. I'm kind of curious how what will happen. What will happen if when the gender stuff dies down? God willing, Goddess willing. I wonder what she will do. She'll just kind of fade back into her.
I think she's behaving a little bit erratically, and I think we can maybe expect a bit of a crash soon, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I wonder too. It's just like, but it's almost kind of like, but it's all in a way you're like, well, all right. If this is the hill you want to die on, if you want to.
Well, maybe she's just high on her own power, but we'll see.
That could be. We'll see. We'll see if because
she's now spending it on something.
She's both the queen. She's the queen. She's the queen of something, and she's also the community leader, community spokesperson for women, which is cool. All right. See you next time, Laura. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tara. Keep up the good work.
Oh yeah, woohoo! You too. See you. And we want to get Nick back on. Nick and the lovely Eleanor. They were a kick in the pants. We'll get them back on. All right. See you. Bye.
Yeah.
All right. So, 2 hours and 12 minutes. So that was the lovely Laura Jones. And this has been the Morbid Symptoms News. I'm going to try to do a stream weekdays on the morbid symptoms that catch my eye, whether in terms of denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and occasionally acceptance. Every once in a while, there's an example of acceptance. Somebody who seems to have accepted the situation that we're in, and is not wallowing in despair. So not in depression, but just like, okay, here's the situation is, and let's get down to business. Building something different out of what we have. So please do join when you can. Keep a lookout for that. Please do like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. For those of you who like my laugh or what I'm trying to do here, and the people that I'm collaborating with, if you want to become a Patreon or become a paid subscriber to the Substack. I also try to put an article out once a week there. Please do. That's great, because my plan, I would like to do this full time, and to have this be my regular job, the Morbid Symptoms Media and Morbid Symptoms News and Report, and the podcast, and also the articles. So if you would like to participate in that in any way that you can, I would very, very much appreciative. If anybody has a morbid symptom they think we should talk about on the show, or like to join the show to talk about, please let me know. I'm totally open to that. I'm always happy to have somebody on the screen and on the show with me to interact with, so I don't feel like I'm giving some sort of weird, what would you call it? Hostage video, or like I'm the Martian. What's his name? Anyway, the actor, when you're just alone, you're just giving video reports, even though you think that maybe going out to nowhere. So I'm always happy to have a co-host, guest, etc. Anyway, I'm rambling now, so I should say goodnight. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow around 8 p.m. UK time, which is 3 p.m. US time, for another Morbid Symptoms news and report. Take care, everyone.